Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Torres and I'm with Team 12. In our team we have Kayla Molina, Bo Lawson, Linda Guevara, and Gianna Irungaray. Our company presentation will be about Meta, so I'll start with the agenda. So for our agenda today we have Meta's company narrative, external narratives and challenges, key issue analysis, which includes the privacy and data collection, stakeholder analysis, and our communication objective. So I'll start off with the company's narrative. So Meta is working to sell a virtual community platform by convincing consumers that there are more ways of connecting with people. So in Meta's website, they have their mission stated, which is to build the future of human connection and the technology that makes it possible. So a little background about Meta is that Meta started as the Facebook, which was founded by Harvard students and was initially exclusively for Harvard University students. Then in 2005, the Facebook changed its name to just Facebook and became accessible to the public. In 2021, Facebook rebranded to Meta to show its emphasis on building the metaverse. And now Facebook has different platforms like Instagram, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and Threads. So now I'll turn it over to Bo Lawson, who will be going over external narratives and challenges.
Thank you, Michelle. Before discussing Meta's key issue, I think it's important to understand the broader conversation surrounding the company. When we looked at Meta's mission, investor communications, and public messaging, we found a very consistent narrative. Meta presents itself as a company focused on building human connection, creating community, empowering communication, and driving innovation through technology. Those themes appear repeatedly across the company's website, annual reports, and public statements. However, when we looked at external sources, we found a different set of conversations taking place. While Meta emphasizes connection, many critics focus on user attention and engagement. While Meta highlights community and communication, research and policymakers often discuss misinformation and content moderation. While Meta promotes innovation, regulators and oversight organizations frequently raise questions about accountability and transparency. And while Meta emphasizes personalized experiences, privacy advocates often focus on the amount of data required to support those experiences. The headlines shown here are examples of those conversations appearing across major media outlets and research organizations. For example, while Meta describes itself as building human connection, some critics argue that the company's advertising-based business model creates strong incentives to maximize engagement and time spent on the platform. While Meta highlights its role in creating communities, researchers continue debating how social media platforms influence the spread of information and whether algorithms can unintentionally amplify misleading content. And while Meta promotes innovation and new technologies, government and oversight organizations continue asking whether regulation and accountability are keeping pace with the company's influence. What's interesting is that these external narratives don't necessarily claim that Meta's mission is false. Instead, they represent a different interpretation of the company's priorities, incentives, and impact. More importantly, these narratives continue appearing across multiple sources rather than being isolated criticisms. To better understand why they continue to gain attention, let's take a closer look at each one and some examples that support them. To better understand these external narratives, I wanted to look at a specific example supporting each one. The first narrative is that Meta profits from user attention. One reason this narrative exists is because of how Meta makes money. According to Meta's 2024 annual report, approximately 98% of the company's revenue came from advertising. Since advertisers are paying to reach users, engagement becomes extremely valuable. Critics point to this and argue that keeping people on Meta's platforms longer isn't just good for connection and community, it's also good for business. Because of that, some external observers view Meta through the lens of attention and engagement rather than simply human connection. The second narrative focuses on misinformation. A recent example comes from Meta's decision to end its third-party fact-checking program in the United States and move toward a community notes model. Reuters reported that the decision sparked debate among journalists, researchers, and policymakers. Some supported the change because they felt it would encourage more open discussion and reduce concerns about censorship, but others worried it could make it harder to address misleading information on the platform. Regardless of which side people agreed with, the reaction showed how often Meta becomes part of the larger conversation about information quality and what responsibilities social media companies have for the content users see. The third narrative involves data collection. One example comes from a Reuters article published earlier this year. They reported an internal Meta tool that tracked employee activity, including things like mouse clicks and application usage. The story generated discussion because it highlighted how much information organizations can collect and raised questions about where people draw the line between gathering useful information and protecting privacy. While the example focused on employees rather than platform users, it contributed to a broader conversation that frequently surrounds Meta. How much information is being collected, how it's being used, and whether stakeholders feel comfortable with that level of visibility. The final narrative focuses on accountability. One example comes from Meta's own independent oversight board. Reuters reported that the board criticized Meta for implementing major policy changes without fully evaluating their potential impact on users. Situations like this contribute to a broader conversation about whether oversight and accountability are keeping pace with the influence of large technology companies. As Meta continues to evolve and introduce new technologies and policies, questions around transparency, governance, and accountability continue to follow the company. What stood out to me while researching these examples is that these narratives don't really exist independently. Discussions about engagement often lead to conversations about data collection. Discussions about misinformation often lead to conversations about accountability. Together, they shape how external audiences perceive Meta. Looking across these narratives, one theme appears repeatedly, and that's privacy and data collection. Because it sits at the intersection of several of these concerns, it has become one of the most significant challenges to Meta's public image. That brings me to my next slide, which we'll discuss before we go into a deeper discussion about privacy and data collection. Looking across all four narratives, what I found interesting is that they challenge Meta's mission in different ways. Meta presents itself as a company focused on connection, community, communication, and innovation. However, external audiences often evaluate the company through concerns about engagement, misinformation, data practices, and accountability. Together, these narratives shape public perception of Meta and influence how the company is discussed outside of its own communications. While each narrative focuses on a different issue, one topic appears repeatedly across several of them: privacy and data collection. Questions about user information often emerge in discussions about engagement, misinformation, and accountability alike. Because of that, privacy and data collection have become one of the most significant challenges to Meta's public image and reputation. I'll now turn it over to Kayla Molina, who will take a closer look at privacy and data collection and why it remains such an important issue for the company.
Thank you, Bo. Now that we've covered external narratives and challenges, let's get into why our group chose privacy and data collection as Meta's key issue. The reason we chose this issue is because it impacts every major platform in Meta's ecosystem. Instagram, Facebook, Threads, WhatsApp. Meta relies on user data for lots of things, including personalized content, targeted ads, and improving the overall user experience. Whether we realize it or not, most of us interact with data collection every single day. And honestly, I think most of us are guilty of clicking accept on the terms and conditions without reading, or we find ourselves talking about something and later get an ad for it on Instagram and think, is our phone listening to us? Whether that's actually the case or not, it shows how many people have become aware of data collection and how concerned many users are about their privacy. Because data collection is such a large part of how Meta operates, privacy concerns have become one of the company's most significant challenges. It's important to understand why these issues still persist. First, users want more transparency. People are becoming more aware of their digital footprints and they want a better understanding of how companies collect, use, and distribute their information to other companies. Second, Meta continues to face regulatory scrutiny. The company has faced investigations, fines, and increased oversight related to its privacy concerns, which keeps them in the public spotlight. Finally, of all of this, it leads to trust challenges. Even though millions of people continue to use Meta's platform daily, myself included, concerns about privacy can still impact how much confidence users have in the company. So, while Meta sees data collection as a tool to improve products and services, it could be an issue for stakeholders. These concerns don't just affect public perception, they also have significant business implications for Meta. The first is user trust. If users don't feel comfortable with how their information is being handled, it can affect engagement and confidence in the platform. The second is regulatory pressure. As privacy laws continue to evolve, Meta has to spend more time and resources allocated on compliance requirements and responding to regulators. The third is advertising revenue. Since targeted advertising is one of Meta's main streams of income, changes to data collection practices can directly impact how effective advertising is on the platform. At the end of the day, privacy and data collection aren't just technology issues, they're business issues. They affect trust, reputation, and Meta's ability to grow and innovate in the future. With that in mind, I'll hand it over to Gianna, who will discuss the stakeholders that are most affected by this issue.
Thank you, Kayla. So here I have the stakeholder analysis. Several key stakeholders are affected by Meta's privacy and data collection practices. First, users. Users are directly impacted. While they benefit from personalized content and a more connected experience, many are concerned about how much personal information is being collected, how it's being used, and where it's going. Advertisers. Advertisers benefit from Meta's ability to provide targeting advertising based on the user data. However, changes to privacy policies or regulations could reduce the effectiveness of those advertising tools. Third, regulators. Regulators and government agencies play an important role because they have the authority to enforce privacy law and hold companies accountable. These organizations have been involved in previous investigations and legal actions related to Meta's handling of user data. Because each of the stakeholders have different interests and concerns, Meta must balance business goals with transparency, privacy, protection, and regulatory compliance. Next, I would like to introduce Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianna. As we've seen, there is a clear difference between how Meta presents itself and how many people view the company. Meta's mission is to build the future of human connection and create technology that brings people together. The company also highlights principles such as building community and protecting privacy. However, concerns about data collection, privacy practices, and regulatory scrutiny have created a gap between Meta's intended message and public perception. This gap presents a communication challenge because trust plays a major role in how users, regulators, and the public engage with the company. To address the communication gap, our recommendation is for Meta to focus on increasing public trust through greater transparency. While Meta's privacy policy explains how data is collected, used, and protected, many users may not fully understand these practices. Our communication priorities focus on clearly explaining what information is collected and why, communicating how data is used to improve user experiences, highlighting available privacy controls, and reinforcing how Meta protects personal information. By communicating these areas more clearly and consistently, Meta can help improve understanding of its data practices and strengthen confidence in its privacy commitments.